Welcome to Changing Shapes and our new regular segment, Wish I Thought of That with Hiba. So great to have you here. I'm excited to get these started. Such a great
Yeah.
idea. Thanks for being game.
Hey, thank
Welcome.
you for having me. Yeah, I'm excited. Let's go.
Let's do it. So yeah, I'm just starting off. I wanted to ask you what have you been working on lately? What have you seen out there, or what have you been building recently since we last spoke?
So, since we last spoke, I've been working on a product activation campaign, and it's been really interesting because instead of focusing so much on only on the features of the product that I'm working on right now, I also get to think about all the different activations and ways in which we're going to get people to try it. I'm putting up, a system for experiments so that we can track how people are engaging with it over time. So it's been a very fruitful and busy time, but wearing a lot more hats than I usually wear. So it's been good, been busy, the brain's on fire, a little tired, but good. How about you? What have you been working on?
I've been working on a couple of things. We've been building AI tools, which has been quite interesting. So
Mm,
one, we've been building an AI tool for education, and I've been kind of diving into the topic a little bit, how how GPT or other large language models can bring information to life. So if you have a
mm,
huge amount of information and you might want to interact with it, so we're building actually for one of our clients, we're building a tool that helps teachers and learners interact with a large body of information and kind
mhm,
of track their adherence to the things that they're learning and how they're progressing, ask follow-up
mm,
questions and things like that. And it's sort of between people who already know that information and people who are learning it.
mm.
So that's been interesting on one level. But then the other one was I've also been creating GPT instructions for RFPs in Germany. So I don't know if you've looked at RFPs in Germany ever before, but it's been
Tell me
eye-opening.
about it.
They're
Yeah,
they're really well, as you can imagine, you get a lot of documents that are very long.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I think I had one which was like 200 pages of
Mm,
instructions of what they're after. And that's a lot of information to take in where you're even, at the beginning trying to assess, is this something that we want to test? So
mm.
similar vein, just for me personally, feed it all the information and then start interacting with the data that they're providing. And that's been a lot of fun and quite insightful. And it's also something that I can also give to people in our team to then also ask
Totally.
questions about the project. So that's been quite entertaining.
Totally. I'm very curious to hear about how you're finding it's changing your workflow and also what your team thinks, because I think that that's a very kind of sensible and useful usage of a GPT. Like, of course, to be able to help you synthesize so much information really quickly and like get to the heart of what the RFP is asking for much quicker.
The thing that I'm most worried about is it making things up that aren't in there or it missing
Oh,
things that, so since we're outsourcing that, those are the two bits where I need to always double check, and it's going to take some time for me to build trust.
honestly, fair enough. If you analyzed all of my chats and you looked at the number of times I'm like, are you making things up? Can you fact check this for me again? Fact check it for me again. I'm extremely wary. Whenever I get research back or analysis back, I really try to test it and challenge it and like catch it off guard. And there's so much time and energy that goes into that where you end up kind of thinking like, this is this a good use of time? But yeah, I feel you.
What's your method to make sure that it isn't like you can't really take its word for it? That it's like, no, I promise I've told you the truth. Do you have a
Mm.
method how you quickly ensure that you trust it?
Well, when I ask it to fact check something, I ask it to also give me the rationale. And I often will not just say, hey, fact check this for me. I'll say, can you cross reference the analysis you just did with these materials or this resource, which I have a lot of trust in? So that's something that I like to do. I'm like, hey, put your analysis against one of the sources that it found or that I have. And that's a really good way for me to kind of know like how much it differs. And the areas which are not new, but that aren't referenced in the main source that I'm trusting. Those are the parts then that I like go deeper on. I also generally in my project settings, I have primed it as best I can to not be overconfident and to always, and a small thing which I think helps is whenever I'm asking it to do analysis or work with a large amount of information, it has to ask clarifying questions of what I'm trying to get out of the analysis as well. So whatever it gives back to me, like there's no surprises of what I'm looking for. And it knows that I don't want overconfident, broad strokes analysis because that's what I'm there for. I need it to help me with the details. Yeah.
That's really cool. It's interesting because yeah, I'll taking note to add a few of those. Some of those I've got, but some of the cross referencing part, I want to give that a try. A lot of what
Yeah.
I like to do is if something like I have a sort of sense of, oh, that sounds weird, I'll ask
Mm,
it to show me where it found that. And
mm-hmm.
if it really is coming from like, then I sort of go and check the document that
Yeah.
it's actually there and the
100%.
context
Yeah.
of how it's been mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, but I find running into mistakes and finding them always reminds me to be more cautious. So earlier,
Yeah.
I think last week, I was actually going to do a recording and my internet was too slow. I need to get a new router, and I got GPT to give me some advice. And I purchased what I thought was the right thing, but it wasn't. And it reminded
Mm-hmm.
me how if I'm not actually doing something I really know a lot about, I
Yeah.
need to be a lot more careful about what I ask.
Yeah.
So if I'm moving in a
Yeah.
space where I do know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
it's easier for me to identify.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's
Mm-hmm.
something I don't know that much about routers and whatnot,
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
so that was a bit of a nice experience for me to just be
Yeah.
reminded that, okay,
Fair
now I have to
enough.
return this thing because I bought the wrong one.
Fair enough. You know, that's actually that reminds me of something really important, which I'm not the most disciplined at doing. But whenever you have like a super deep session and you are learning things or you find like you really had to give way more instructions than usual, getting it to synthesize the instructions for later and then being disciplined about taking that and putting it in the project settings or just keeping it for yourself somewhere so that you can prime it again. It's easier to start from the right place the next time is important. And it could be you could ask it to reflect and you could also say like, okay, just like you said, for topics where I'm not so confident, I need you to ask that many more clarifying questions to me. And so the instruction to it will end up being gauge firstly how sure or confident I am of the task that needs to be done or the how much context I have, and from there kind of act accordingly. So I think that it's a discipline thing though because we're probably starting so many chats in a day, but somewhere there's like a little bit of a retrospective you need to do like once a week or once a month to
Yeah,
be like, which chats? Because that's how I think. I'm like, oh yeah, that chat was a tough one. That was a long one. That was
yeah,
a deep one. And then sometimes I go back and I'm like, can you just summarize like all the twists and turns that we did so that I can start from that point the next time?
that's cool. Yeah, I'll definitely take that on. That's a cool one. So moving into the topic of today, which I'm really excited
Hmm.
about,
Yeah.
which is chat as user interface and other ways to interact with these
Yeah.
AI tools that we have. Now,
Yeah.
I love that we're having this conversation because you were actually the one who pointed out to me that the Chat GPT chat interface was just an experiment. It wasn't really meant as
Yeah.
the ultimate way of interacting with this tool
Yeah. Yeah.
originally, but it just took
Yeah.
off for
Yeah.
various reasons. It'd be really great today to just chat about, what chat as interface means and what other interface options we have out there. So yeah, I'd be interested to get
Yeah.
your thoughts on this.
So I've been noodling on this for a while, and full disclaimer, given just the topics and things that take up space in our brain, it's not lost on me that this is a little esoteric. Like, why are there chat boxes everywhere? And should all the products have chat boxes? I realize that that's quite niche, but I also gave myself a chance to ask myself, why am I still stuck on this topic after I heard it? And by the way, I heard this in Lenny Richitsky's podcast interview with Nick Turley, who is the head of product of ChatGPT. So very, very important guy. And he expressed surprise at how this pattern and the whole ChatGPT kind of like interface UI was just kind of copied and run and all of the players ran with it, right? And so that kind of got me thinking. And then when I put that next to the fact that I'm seeing so many prompting guides, all the zero code platforms are obviously chat based. There's stuff that ChatGPT did. So it starts with this big chat box in the middle of the screen, you type, and then you end up in a chat. This was in 22. So fast forward to today, we now, with the dev day that just happened, we are now going to see a lot more inline visuals, components, and the chat's going to feel less like a chat and more really like a collaborative space, a fast moving, organic, collaborative space. So this just happened, and I'm feeling a little bit more calmer. I feel a little bit more intrigued now to spend time in this space, because when I thought about it, I realized the thing which didn't quite sit well with me was that we were asking people, especially on generative platforms, we were asking people to create things and collaborate on things through text. And I find that the kickoff point, like let's just take technology out of it, right? If we're two people, we're trying to make something together, it can start with an email. It can start with a Slack message. You say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, this, and this, and this. That's very fine. But as the project progresses, we start to sketch, we start to annotate, we start to leave comments on things. And it just felt very weird to me that as software builders, we completely were forgetting. It felt like we were forgetting about that. And we were relying fully on chat, and we were putting the burden on users to be great at prompting, really articulate, and yeah, to do back and forths and to do visual creative work. We're getting them to use words. That just didn't make sense to me. I have some examples and references that were really inspiring that I can talk about a bit more. But before I get into that, I think that where my thinking on this topic has evolved a little bit more is also just the usage of voice. I've talked to you a lot about this. I've been
Yeah.
telling everyone, "Hey, are you using Whisper? Are you using Whisper?" Because for me, I'm a yapper. I love to chat, and actually, a product style is I do a lot of videos. I record voice notes. I do meetings. I've never really been the best writing tickets and writing specs and writing everything, although, yes, of course, one has to do it. But that really changed for me as a person how I was interacting with the technology. Because with writing, we edit ourselves really a lot. We edit ourselves for politeness, for succinctness, for clarity, and then put in place a prompt guide then. And you are starting to change your thinking to make it easier for the machine, to just make it easier to work with the machine. And that doesn't make sense to me. So my thinking on the topic has gone into all sorts of places. And I think with the all the apps and things that are going to be entering into ChatGPT, I think we're going to get into a little bit more of an interesting space. But that's but the jury is still out. I really think as product people, as designers, I'm really hungry and yearning for to see apps that are using generative AI as like a core feature, to find more interesting ways for people to kind of collaborate and to get kind of content out of them other than a chat box. Yeah. But how have you been finding this?
Yeah, I mean, you prompted a couple of things in me in the last weeks talking about that. So, the even questioning that in the first place. And I think, besides the fact that you say you like to talk, you're also an excellent writer. Your Substack is one of my favorite things to read. And, you write really in a really engaging way. And I think there is a difference when we talk versus when I read your
Yeah.
writing. And I think for people, I was thinking what we're really doing is we're using these tools to interact with, or we're using our phones or the computers to interact with the internet or tools and databases, right? And we want to achieve something. And then there's different ways how to get into it. So there's either, like you said, there's voice, there's writing, and there's graphical user interfaces. So you might just have
Hmm.
graphics that'll help you with something. And I was just
Yeah.
thinking about in our conversations where do I use voice? And for me,
Mm.
that was quite new. And when you mentioned Whisper, I kind of started mostly using it because I trust you, and one of our clients recommended it too because I needed to get over the cringe factor of talking to myself, which I have for me was really cringe. Like I'm like I don't want to do this, but
Yeah.
since you and also our client were really raving about it, I'm like okay, fine, I'll get over myself. I'll try it. I love using it, and one of the interesting things were as well, my business partner Jakob, we've known each other since we were 10 years old, and my typing in Czech is weird. I've sort of taught myself how to type in Czech by looking at it, but my grammar's all over the place. So is my
Yeah.
spelling. People understand
Yeah.
me, but it's
Yeah.
clear that I never officially learned how to write Czech.
Yeah.
But if I speak to Whisper in Czech, it's perfect. Like it does the grammar correctly. So he's like, I know it's you, but it feels like I'm talking to somebody else. So
Yeah.
having those slightly interesting interactions, that was quite on the nose on how different it is when I dictate something versus when I write it. Because when I write,
Hmm.
I'm sort of always thinking about how is this coming across to the other person? How can I structure this for them to read it easily? And when I speak, I do that too. But because I don't
Mm.
see what I'm writing, I can't see exactly what the person is hearing. So
Sure.
using Whisper is interesting to see that because it's that in between space where I then can go in and edit it. But
Yeah.
my thinking is very different in terms of,
Totally.
it's a lot more, it's a lot more intuitive. It's a lot more story like. And when it's written, I tend to think about it more. I structure it more. And
Hmm.
I think, and it's more, yeah, thinking out loud and being more reflective in speaking, and in writing, I'm more analytical. And
Sure.
then for a user as well, seeing graphical user interface, I think it's a lot more about seeing data and looking at more complex information in a way that I can analyze really quickly. So
Hmm.
be it if I want to see information about price comparisons, or, when they did the Zillow example
Hmm. Hmm.
on dev day, I read or hear about a house. It's one thing. I want to see the house and I want to see the
Totally.
price and I want to see
Totally.
all these things. So
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to see, do I need graphics for spatial reasoning? Do I need to read because I'm more analytical? Do I need to hear it because it's more intuitive? And finding where we use which one will be really interesting.
Yeah.
And what I found exciting about Dev Day was now it seems like we can blend those and use the right one in the right moment. If we get it right, or
Mm.
if we
Mm.
collectively, as the people building these tools,
Yeah.
if it can intuitively understand, you know what, now is the right time to show the app and show it graphically. Now's the right
Totally.
time to talk about it. Now's the
Totally.
right time to allow the person to speak versus
Mm.
to, click something. That's a really interesting space because it takes off the load of the person to have to think about, where do
Yeah.
I have to go to achieve what I want to do. My
Totally.
worry with it though is, I thought instantly about, I love to go hiking, and if I could get GPT to actually give me a good hiking route and refer to, for example, I use an app called Backfacts, which
Hmm.
is people track their hikes and they write about their hikes and what they're like, and you can then
Hmm.
take somebody else's hike, which is great.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a really good tool for me because I trust that most people who are there, they self edit to really be honest about what the hike is like, how hard it
Sure.
is, what the views are. A friend of mine who's really into hiking, he used GPT to find a hike for us, and it did exist. It wasn't completely made up, but the
Yeah.
views it was talking about didn't exist, right? When we got there, like, yeah, the views aren't quite what you said. It was a nice hike, but it wasn't what it said. So I think it's great if I could then refer to an app like Backfacts to actually find real hikes. My concern though is with AI slop, can I also write into these tools using GPT where will then people, let GPT write about hikes that might be over embellished, or, just create content that isn't real, where then
Mm.
it turns my trusted brand into something where I'm not sure about it.
Mm.
So
Mm.
the whole thing is melding into, I'm excited about the melding of these different ways of interacting with data, but I'm also a little bit scared about what is it opening up to, and how is the
Mm.
data that exists that we can access going to change.
Mm. 100%. I think it's what you said is something that a lot of people are thinking about, talking about, especially product folks, right? Because this is product placement now, like visual product placement that's happening. The UI of these apps, or rather some of the outputs of these apps, like with Figma, with the Fig Jamboards, that's going to get more exposure. And I'm saying that because what you're expressing is a very real, just sanity concern as a user. Like, what if what I'm seeing is embellished and it's not actually real? And I think that when we are talking about these interfaces, it's easy to kind of focus on what our experiences are as people, like how we are using it for our work, for example, or for personal things. But then imagine if you were in the product team for these apps that are integrating into this, it's a huge distribution channel now, right? So why am I saying that? I'm saying that because I don't know if this type of chat interface or this chatbot experience platform that is this amazing distribution channel, I don't think that a lot of these companies or products necessarily care about that. I don't think ChatGPT actually cares about that because we're still out here. That's how we started this conversation. We started this conversation talking about what are we prompting to make sure that the AI isn't making things up. But in this whole conversation and excitement, again, it's on the user to use the chat box to sanity check the outputs. That doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think that takes away from the incredibleness of the platform to make it easier for users to fact check. But again, this interface, this UI feels thin. It feels so minimal. And and that to me feels not just dangerous, but I'm not fully understanding why. And that makes me sometimes think that, I don't know, maybe I'm just so out of step with AI products and things in general, but I don't think so because what I'm not doing is throwing away 10 years of best practices and user-centric design. When I'm looking at these products, I see opportunities to build on top of this, these amazing new channel distribution channels we're creating. Like if I was the PM at Zillow or Figma, I'd be like, yes, bring the bring this UI into ChatGPT, no problem. But like that, I think it's not just an aesthetic thing for me. I just think there are so many other user problems that people are talking about when it comes to a chat-based UI that no one seems to be trying to solve for. And actually, I had an idea. I started trying to build it. It was like a browser extension where if the AI was saying certain phrases like, here is all the analysis, or here are my top 10 recommendations, there'd be like a little pop up that was just like, have you asked the AI to fact check what it just said? Because you need those prompts and those quick actions like outside of the chat box, you know? So yeah, what you said really like that reminded me of something that that I've also been noodling on for quite a bit.
What you mentioned brings up two things for me, two main factors. One is the limitation of the amount of choices that are presented to us,
Hmm.
and the other is knowing how to describe exactly what I want.
Mm,
And both of it run down to, I'm not a huge Trekkie, but as a kid, my grandparents watched The Next Generation. And I always
mm,
found it interesting how the computer interfaces they had always seemed absurd to me, that they didn't really say anything. They looked cool, but they
yeah.
didn't say anything. And all the interactions they had with, you know, the enterprise were by saying, computer so and so, right? So it was all voice
Hmm.
interaction. And
Mm,
I always found that really oddly not intuitive. And I think
hmm.
that there's an element of being able to look at something to say, like, I kind of know what I want, but when I see it, I can then navigate through it. So
Hmm.
with my screens, whichever ones they are, I know where I'm going, I'm navigating through, and then I find the thing I'm looking for.
Mm,
Whereas now it feels like rather than looking at, all the raspberries on the bush and finding the one that I want, I have to know how to describe the perfect raspberry for me, the right hue, and I have to know that and know how to explain it first to get the right thing to come out. Otherwise, I'll get some boilerplate answer, which just leads
yeah,
straight to Zillow, but it's not going to show me the things that I would see if I was actually looking at a broader scope. So those
totally.
two things coming together where it limits my choices, that it goes to the default large companies like Zillow, but also it it forces me to, if I'm not really good at knowing what I'm asking for,
Mm.
and knowing it in advance, it limits my browsing ability. So it has to. So the people who will navigate these tools best have to just be really good at describing what they're looking for and honing that skill.
They need to know that, or they need to know how to be adversarial in the right amount or how to slow down the
Mm,
AI. And I taught
good
I
point.
wrote about this kind of recently. I did like a bit of a meta experiment. I had ChatGPT and Claude go back through and I turned memory on and I said, go back through all the chats and I want you to try to synthesize what you think my prompting style is. Because I was using voice a lot. I'm generally, I would say, quite adversarial with the tools. And I was just like, but I like the outputs that I get. To your point about like not being shown one raspberry and being limited in my choice, like I actually think I work pretty well with the tools. And I was just like, what? But I'm not following a super structured approach. Why is that? Because I do this IRL and I've done this with people a lot. My job as a product manager requires me to just deliver requirements and then discuss back and forth and negotiate. No feature, no work that I do is a like, here are the requirements. Cool, got it. Let's work on it. It's never that much linear. So for me, that feels weird. Just like how you're saying, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house and I'm based in Berlin. Here are 10 options in Berlin. I'd be like, no, a prompt and something I'll say will be like, slow it down. Stop being so action focused. I'll tell you when I'm ready to take an action. It makes me think of something that Claude is kind of experimenting with on the side. Can I just show that to you really
Yeah.
quickly?
Yes.
I think that would be pretty fun for us to look at together. So, have you seen this before? Want to
No.
build from your imagination?
Uh-huh. No.
So, it's a demo, and it looks like an OS, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So talk about prompts and context and information that isn't limited to the chat box. So you have the cute post-its. Again, look, it's very cutesy, but imagine if on ChatGPT or Claude you had these post-its and it was saying something like, "Hey, you are in the driver's seat. Fact check." That takes nothing away from the platform, but it's a really important piece of information for somebody at whatever level they're at while they're using it. But I'm going to just show you just a few things with this builders. You can obviously start from your own prompt. It's going to start building things in real time in front of you. And when you're interacting with it, so this pops up, you can not only see the prototype in real time, but you can start to make changes to it. So in terms of interactive PRDs, think about all the data analysis you're doing. This could be a much more fun and interesting way to engage with your data. In this case, I picked a prompt that was to create an app, right? But I've used this for doing data analysis and other things as well. The way in which it was giving the code back to me and explaining what goes where was hyper visual, hyper interactive. It's all underpinned by a chat, but this does not feel like a chatbot experience to me. I guess this is what I'm trying to say. This is working with how my brain works, and it's not forcing me to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I'm going to say is that we all hated chatbots. We hated chatbots. They're everywhere. So why are we designing our products around a chat input? I, again, I get that this is the starting point, but this on Lovable, on Replit, on everything, that can't be the primary like entry point into the tool, and then that's the only way in which you can engage with the tool to get value out of it. So that's why I'm seeing more and more apps kind of try to do this differently and try to incorporate chat and text based inputs in different ways, but like I've also never been the most visual as a PM. I'm quite scrappy. I tend to be like, let's lower the delight, let's up the usability. Let's just get to the point really quickly. But since I've started taking on more design work and just generally as time has gone by, I'm understanding how important this is as a topic, how you prime the user and prime their mindset and expectations and how you empower them and help them get smarter and better at using the tool over time. Because not everybody's good at writing and not everybody's good at prompting. So why are we forcing people, saying to people, if you prompt good, that's the best way to get value out of this tool? I think that's doing the tool a disservice, first and foremost. But then it's also making the user feel like they have an unnecessary learning curve.
This is a good segue into the sort of next chapter of our
Mm.
chat. What learnings from what you've been seeing specifically do you take into the product building practice? What would you tell me in terms of product building practice where would you direct me? What would you say is important for me to look out to or try?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, but then I actually want to hear what you have on your list and what you're doing, and how because this chat UI topic, there's we can talk about it as PMs, but we can also talk it as builders, as people that want to create things or analyze things using this type of user experience. So the one thing I will say is this whole user chat-based user experience is about speed. It's about reducing friction. It's about getting to your first idea or concept or draft or version of your website as quickly as possible because we don't have enough time in the day. We're trying to be more productive. It's all very virtuous. We have to show that we're busy in order for people to feel like we are worthy or valuable, all this kind of thing. The part that you can't shortcut is research. What do I mean by research? I mean that you need to have a point of view on what you like and what you don't like. And you can say that just because you use a lot of software and apps that you are exposed to a lot of what's out there. But remember what we said is now all of these apps have run with a variation of ChatGPT. More and more apps are going to look the same, look and feel the same. So what do you do? How do you get inspiration for like how you want to work or what you should keep in mind when you are building or creating something? It doesn't have to be an app, by the way. It could be a strategy deck. It could be a research report. Everything has a component of design to it. But I think it's really important to make a Spark file for yourself. So grab references to things that inspire you that you like. It could be writing references, it could be visual references. So there's that. But then also, I use tools like Mobbin and Sublime and My Mind. I try a lot of tools out. So there's some things fall out of the rotation. A la Pinterest, it's important to keep a mood board, keep things visual, and to not fall into this minimalist, super thin feeling world where it's just about text. I think we are visual creatures. We like to be shown. Coming back to the point about research, when you're embarking on a project, factor in that into your timeline. You need time to think and to dream and to explore. It could be an hour, it could be 2 hours. I'm not saying you have to do this in perpetuity, but you got to go down the rabbit hole a little bit. Find inspiration and save it in a place where will easily come back to it and have a strong point of view on what is going to feel good and joyful and right and it's going to reflect the vision in your mind and it start with that before you start using these chat-based tools because very quickly the AI is always going to try to get you to an output. Shall I generate the first draft, the deck right away? Like it's going to force you towards that as quickly as possible. So it's really important that when you know your vision, you're gonna be like, hold on. No, I'm not ready to generate the first draft because I haven't even given you all of my references and context yet. So that would be my suggestion to anyone that's using any of these generative tools.
I love that. What I think is a really important takeaway around how to build interfaces and products is based on what you said in terms of tastes and having an opinion about things. I always compare the best products out there to be like a really helpful person. So
Mm-hmm.
if I go into a store and there's somebody there, so you have great experiences where you walk into a store and you've got a rough idea of what you want, but you don't know what it is, whether it's a present or a solution, right? You need faster internet and you talk to somebody and they ask you the exactly right questions. And then they say, it's right here. Here's a few
Mm-hmm.
choices and their pros and cons. You can decide, but I've pre-filtered everything for you so I can make that decision. Or if I have a problem and somebody's on the phone and they really understand me and they can talk to me and really just get what I'm about, that's really helpful. Whereas, the other day I went into a store and I needed something and they kind of weren't paying attention. They were they didn't
Mm-hmm.
really ask me the right questions. And I kind of left thinking I kind of knew more before I came in. And that wasn't great. And I'm like, I didn't really enjoy this. And, everybody's allowed to
Yeah.
have a bad day. It's
Mm-hmm.
fine. But for me, the digital tools we build, when we build them, we think about, well, why is somebody here? Why are they looking at
Mm-hmm.
this screen? Where
Mm-hmm.
have they just gotten here from? So
Yeah.
what are their needs going to be? Where are they expecting their main action point to be? Where are they expecting other action points to be? How easily do they find them? where have they learned to expect to find these certain interactions, both via the tool that they've been using for a while, ideally. So what have they learned by using this tool? And what general cultural expectations to have? Where is the
Mm,
profile button on an app?
mm,
Like those are
mhm,
things where
mhm,
don't reinvent the wheel, put them where, in
mhm.
one of the few places that people expect to see them. And in a way, work with design in a way where you're maximizing helpfulness for people to
Mhm,
come in and do what they want to do.
mhm.
Doesn't mean don't make me think. You want people to be able
Yeah,
to think. But I don't want to
yeah,
be thinking about, oh, where was the profile button again for me to,
100%.
I don't want to think about that. I want to think about the
Yeah.
thing that I've come here to think about.
Mm, mhm,
And so for me, when it comes to designing these interfaces and when you're doing this kind of research, it's taking note of, why is this thing working particularly well? Why is this, you know, if I'm out here for entertainment, why is the entertainment coming particularly well and what is it doing for
yeah,
me? Am I here
yeah,
for a sort of meditative entertainment or funny entertainment or distraction? Or am I here to learn something? Am I here to
mm,
achieve a
mhm,
goal? Am I trying to input, what I've learned? Am I here to input my gas meter? And how
mm,
easy is that? Why are people there? And what are their expectations?
yeah,
So generally with these tools, understanding, do I need a dashboard to present certain information in a way that's easy to consume in order to make a decision? Or do I need a chat interface because I have a question which I need help formulating,
totally,
getting some
totally,
input and kind of going back and forth a bit? And so from one of the products that we're building right now, we're kind of running both in parallel. There is a space where you can type and where you can get input on written words and on kind of querying databases. But on the side, there's also a dashboard which leads to, it leads with the expectations of people, what they want and need to see, but
yeah,
it curates, has a conditionally rendered UI where it shows certain bits of data as and when you
mm,
need them, but hides
mhm,
the things that you don't need to sort of
mm.
reduce the overwhelm.
That's amazing. That sounds like you're decentering the chat box because the user might not need it in that way, in that moment, but it's still there. So there's no way we're not going to have these in pretty much every platform you use. But I love that. I think that's a really like that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And do you know what? There's a word for or a phrase for what you were describing. All those questions you were asking about, like what does the user actually need in the moment, or if you're using an app, you're like, what do I really need in this moment? They call it product sense. It's a thing. But I guess the bottom line is that it's product sense is not just for product managers anymore. It's for everyone because now everyone's a builder. Everyone's a product manager, so to speak. Maybe not, maybe they wouldn't identify as that, but you need to very consciously and intentionally work on your product sense because that's what's going to help you on a micro level in terms of how you communicate with an AI. It's going to help you with knowing you need to be sketching in this moment. Do you need to be seeing the dashboard in this moment, etc. Both for yourself as a builder, like what do I need as I'm building, but also what do I want the people using this thing to also be experiencing at a given moment in time. It's a hard because it's called product sense, and that sounds very jargony. But what you're describing, that's what I would wish for a lot of people to start to develop that muscle for. For us, that's how we think and work. We have to. That's how we were trained to do product. But a lot of folks these days are not being trained on that. And then all of the best practices and everything we've learned over the last couple of years when it comes to building good software and practicing user centric design just goes out the window because people aren't stopping to ask those questions. They're just so bent on building as quickly as possible. I think that's a really important takeaway and thing that I've gotten from you from this chat. Product sense is so important.
So, yeah, I think wrapping up, the real interface, or the way the interface should be based, is on intent. So the interface is
Mhm.
intent and it should adapt to what intent people have. And
100%.
I love the sort of takeaway that you mentioned in terms of references collected and making sure that you understand those and that you build your taste, because ultimately, just as you said, this is leading towards a certain homogenization. of products and how we interact with them. And I think there is the cultural trend. I see more and more people talking about, I mean, I forget what the book was, but I just on the Harvard Business Review podcast, they were
Hmm.
interviewing an author who was talking about he calls it the institutification of everything, and how
Yeah.
these big, the big tech companies with their monopolies, how design is just going in a sad
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
And the more the conversation is going around that, and you can see that with architecture, with cars, with apps, with software,
Mm.
everything around us, it's going that way. And I think people are going to get tired of it. So my favorite takeaway is build up your taste, build up your references, understand why you like them and what makes you tick, and then try to translate that into products. And it doesn't have to be that you necessarily have to everything has to be your taste, but that you have an understanding of what is out there and that you build something
Yeah.
that's uniquely human rather than
Yeah.
something generic. So that's my personal favorite takeaway from this chat today.
This was great. It helped me like get like a lot of all these topics sometimes feel so fragmented and all over the place, but after this conversation, I'm like, no, no, they are all connected. This is why they're connected. So it was cool to go deep into these things. And I to build on your takeaway ever so slightly, I think in this moment in time, it's so important that you lean into your sense of weirdness, what you like, what you don't like, and to be really grounded in that and to not try to copy what you think is going to make you look the most, I don't know, professional or make you look the most AI forward. And on top of it, I think if you really want to kind of protect your sense of joy in creating things and building things, you have to really lean into and get to know yourself more than ever. However you want to do that, if it's through collecting references, if it's through going to therapy, if it's through journaling, if it's through curating Spotify playlists, get to know yourself and just in all aspects of your life, and it will be reflected in the things you build and the things you like and the way you talk about the things that you build. I think this is the thing that I keep coming back to and why maybe this chat thing is so important to me. Is that it's forcing me to think and build like everybody else, and I have a resistance to that. So yeah. I think that's a good takeaway for this chat. I like it.
And I think if anybody wants to see inspiration for that, your Substack is a great place to go. So I think everybody should check that out and subscribe. It's really good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for today. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to the next one in a month. It's been good.
Best conversation I've had all week.
Likewise. All right.